Bill Newsome is the CEO of Fibrocore, a biotechnology company that focuses on serving individuals suffering from fibrosis-related disease. He is a Berkshires kid at heart and also a teacher and an actual research scientist turned CEO. Bill's journey is riddled with decision-making, exploration, creativity, and discernment. Get ready to take some notes. My name is Dr. Dennis Rebello, and welcome to my Story Vault. Hey, Bill, welcome to the vault, man.
Hey, Dennis. Great to be in here.
You're like, is it safe? Yeah. It's actually a vault, so it does have a spinning combination. We lost the combination, so we're not going to shut the door.
We may not get out.
Right. There's an escape hatch somewhere, I'm sure. We just haven't found it yet. But, I appreciate you coming down. And, the space at BigWorks, at MoCA, in this vault, my Story Vault, right, is a unique place where we can just have a deep conversation. And you and I we do this kind of thing where we have our time together throughout the week, but this is a little different. There's no end cap time-wise, so we're going to give it a go and get into your story, man.
Excellent. Well, great to be here, Dennis, and looking forward.
Well, yeah, of course, man. So, look at you. You want to tell folks what you are, not just who you are, but what you are in the capacity of your work. That kind of could be helpful.
Yeah, sure. Dennis.
CEO, big shot. Come on.
Yeah, look, we've got a small biotech up in Toronto, Canada, where we've got 3 programs. We're looking to treat patients that are suffering from Alport syndrome, as well as folks suffering from idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So we spend a lot of time thinking about patients and how to get those drugs paid safely to patients and all the things that it takes to make all that happen.
Yeah, amazing. And this work isn't something you just stumbled across, although sometimes it feels that way, I think, in life. When you think about, how did I get here? So we're going to go back, and take the mental flight. The mental flight, I think Martin Luther King, the good doctor, said this mental flight phrase once. I love that. So let's take a mental flight a little bit. Let's go back in time. Yeah. You weren't a Berkshire person forever, although everyone thinks you have been here forever. You were a New Jersey guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So retrace some steps for us. You're down in New Jersey, the land of all good music, as I hear.
Yes, and mass suburbia. So it was myself and my 3 older sisters and my younger brother and our single mom, and started off life in a pretty, I guess what I would describe as mediocre suburban New Jersey lifestyle. 5 kids, 6 years apart, so all pretty tight, and single mom, so pretty intense schedule. But one of our highlights of those early days was my grandfather was a vice president at a bank up here in Lee, Mass, at the old Lee Savings Bank, and or Lee National. I might get that wrong. I'll be in big trouble with him. He's rolling over in his grave. But either way, had settled in the Berkshires, and so we would come up most weekends.
So he was here full time?
Yeah, he was.
Okay, this was where he worked?
Yeah, where he lived.
And you'd visit Grandpa? Is that what you called him?
Yeah, we visit Grandpa Staples. And,
Grandpa Staples. Okay, no relationship to the national chain, right?
No.
Okay,
so
right.
we lost the connection.
Okay, all right. Just checking for those wondering.
So we'd spend a lot of time up here and time in the outdoors and connected. And ultimately we started skiing. And so always really enjoyed coming up to the Berkshires and escaping from New Jersey suburbia, and some long weekend road trips up here, but always
with a lot of kids in the car.
Yeah, with always a big station.
So mom, station wagon, ski stuff, or was that left at Gramps?
Usually ski stuff as well. No.
Okay.
No.
So you're Jan, I'm getting the visual, and you're coming up to the Berkshires. Not exactly like the technology for cars back then wasn't the same as it is today.
No, exactly. You had maps, right?
Right. You had
no
maps,
cell phones.
No cell phones. So
different world.
Lots of singing and pushing and shoving in the car.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Lots of all kinds of funny stories in the car.
Road trip games. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
So you get up here and you're skiing. Your grandfather is showing you these places, or is he?
No, at this point he was older, so it was more actually, ultimately, he wound up in a retirement home, and so it wasn't so physical as we were getting older. So my mom was the one that got us all started skiing, and started off at Otis Ridge in South County, and small area, but certainly felt big to us, and
Sure.
and very welcoming.
How old were you when you were?
I think we started skiing. I was in 3rd grade, I think.
Okay. All right. So in the birth order, where are you?
I'm the oldest son and the fourth kid. So 3 older sisters and then a younger brother.
Sister influence, good influence? The answer is yes, by the way.
Yeah, of course, right? We were all super tight growing up, So, and again, my mom worked a lot, so we were home a lot alone. And my older sister did a lot of mothering and looking after us, and all very tight growing up. And I think all shared the joy of being up in the Berkshires and getting out of the city and being up here.
How much older was your oldest sister?
So there's only 6 years between the 5 of us.
So not many.
Pretty tight.
A few.
No, exactly 4 years.
4. Yeah. Okay. So quick math.
Yeah.
You're a math guy, right?
Yeah,
Biochem guy.
exactly.
Yeah. You're good at the logic. Okay. We'll get there. That's part of the story, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get there. So you're back and forth from New Jersey to the Berkshires, doing some skiing, hiking in the non-ski time of year?
Yeah.
Or during that time of year? Yeah. Okay. And you eventually moved here with mom and your family?
Yeah. So as my grandfather got older, ultimately we needed a place here. We had a apartment in Stockbridge, originally right down the road from Norman Rockwell's museum, which was pretty cool. He was still alive in those days and still painting. So again, nice town to be in for weekends. But ultimately we built a ski house on the backside of Otis Ridge, and we would come up and stay there. And so then again, that really made the skiing take off because we were right there.
Now, is that where you live today, in the same ski house?
No. So we built that house. So we decided to move up from coming up part-time. And that was kind of a funny story. We were having dinner.
So this is back when you were younger.
Yeah. I was halfway through 5th grade when we moved up here.
Okay.
So
you're at the dinner table? 10, this is what we're recalling? Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And we had, we'd always joked about wanting to live in the Berkshires or move to the ski house, but never, took it seriously or whatever. And we're having this dinner, and our mom said, "Oh, well, what do you guys think about moving to the Berkshires, moving up to the ski house?" And we all kind of paused and like, is she serious or whatever? And we're like, "Wow, are you serious?" And yeah. We're like, "Well, when?" "Oh, well, now." And I think it might have been winter break, so I think we were heading up for the week anyways. And we basically finished dinner and put the dishes in the sink and headed to the Berkshires and never looked back. So
and that was it.
Moved into, it was fantastic. So I think, who could not want to move to a ski house and go from weekends to spending your time there full time. So that was a lot
But as
of fun.
a young kid, you've got like a peer group, right? You've got some friends, but you were just, now I'm going.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that, well, did your mom give you any chance to talk about it? Did the brother, sister group weigh in? Did your sibs weigh in and say, yeah, we should, maybe we should wait? Because, you did, I mean, I know it was a tight band of years, only 6, but was there any sort of dialogue about it? Or was it just like a vote, like the McLaughlin group?
No, interesting. So it was unanimous decision. So I think everybody was into it and wanted to go. And I think we didn't think that much about it. I remember now writing a lot of letters back to the kids and ultimately went back. So I do remember seeing the old friends and stuff. And I think a few people that we were really tight with, actually we're still connected with, but by and large at that age, your friend set shift. And certainly the kids that I met in the 5th grade we wound up at Otis Congregational School, which was Otis Consolidated School, which was a great school and again sparked a lot of curiosity, but met some close friends there that I'm still connected with to this day.
So tell me about the assimilation. You're at the ski house.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool thing. Surprise, surprise. Mom's giving you the gift of relocation to where you play. Nothing could be better for a 5th grader.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you've got to kind of navigate school, right? Sounds like you're a little bit of an explorer family. Yeah. Right, you mitigate some risk. You think about it upside downside. Your mom actually wanted you to weigh in. People kind of voted, I guess.
Yeah,
they're all in. You're here. You're in 5th grade. Halfway through.
About halfway through. Yeah.
So you show up. What's going on for you then? I mean, we're tracking your life here. We want to know, how'd you end up in this work? But don't have to get to the big why. We just want to kind of trace it, right? Follow that story path a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think, I guess maybe part of it, there were smaller classes, right? So it's much smaller classroom, much more personalized teaching experience looking back, right? Encouraged a lot of reading and a lot of exploration. And I think even in those days, some really great science teachers that got me curious curious in general, but then also got me curious about plants and biology. And I always liked a lot about gardening and kind of farming and plants and botany in general. And then, I think they just really sparked that interest and curiosity. I think a big part of that was also reading. They encouraged a ton of reading. And I think everybody that came out of that school were strong readers.
Do you think that the Berkshires, the types of people that were here, teachers included, of course, in that group, influenced more thinking for you? Some people tell me that they like escaping to the Berkshires even today, because they're able to think more. There's like less distraction, less traffic, more conversation, and less sort of like, I'm going to run away from this conversation, but I'm going to kind of join the conversation.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, I am a curious explorer.
Yeah.
So for me, it can be very easy to be overwhelmed, right? And when you're in the city, it's just, you're curious about everything and it's hard, right? I'm like a dog walking down the street. It's just impossible to connect with everybody or everything
right?
and
like,
focus.
Oh,
so while I love the city, and as you know, I spend a ton of time in a lot of cities across the globe, for where I want to live, I want it a little bit quieter, I want it a little bit slower, and I want it a little bit more deliberate, right? So I think, like you said, there's everything in the Berkshires. You just kind of have to know where to find it. I definitely like the thinking, and I just felt more at home in the Berkshires than I did in suburbia in New Jersey.
And you felt that, right?
Yeah.
So you're being encouraged to continue as this curious sort of kid, this explorer, this pioneer quester kind of kid. I think that's what we talked about earlier, like this idea of like going into uncharted territory and influencing that journey and that pathway. Your mom, did she have a garden? Was she a gardener?
Yeah, she did.
Okay,
she did. And her parents, our grandparents gardened. Okay. And so when we moved to the ski house, first thing we did was start a little garden in the backyard. And it kind of opened up out into the ski slope. There was a lot of open space and sun for gardening.
So you actually built a garden or expanded the garden there.
Yeah.
Did you have a role in that? Or were you just like a bystander?
No, I was usually the more active one in the family that was gardening and keeping the garden going.
Okay. So just felt like you had to? Was it out of obligation, duty, curiosity?
Gratifying, right? It's not the most economical thing necessarily, right? So it's like going to save the day with the garden or something. But I think to me, it was always nice to produce your own food, to produce something off the land, the connectedness with the land, I guess.
Okay. All right. So that's your foray into plants.
Yeah, and foray, I guess, into biology and in general, and just kind of living systems and how things work. And
so you're here in the land of wonder, the green waves, not the ocean state, right? The Berkshires.
Yeah.
But you did end up in the ocean state.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
Yeah, spent some time down in Connecticut on the coast and long circuitous route to there. But ultimately wound up.
So undergrad for you was studying what, where?
Left the Otis Consolidated School, Monument Mountain High School, 2 years at BCC, which again gave me a very rounded education.
So did you not want to go a traditional 4-year, or did you just want to take a taste of it? Like, what was your thinking, if you can go back to that point?
Yeah, no, definitely both of those things. I think I didn't have a ton of money, so financially it made a lot of sense for me, but also wasn't ready to go off to a big school or leave home at that point. Still, it was just my mom at the house at that point. So still helping look
Somebody
after
had to do the garden too, right?
Somebody had to do the garden.
You're the guy. The master gardener.
Other things, things that weren't always as fun, but yeah.
So the duty part of being part of the family system was important, that you fulfill your duty to the family.
Yeah.
Okay.
absolutely. And no father and oldest son. Yeah.
Yeah, an oldest son. That's right. Okay, got you. So BCC allows Berkshire Community College allows you to get some more I guess quenching of that thirst to explore living systems.
Yeah.
Discoveries there along the way for you?
Amazing stuff, some things that I didn't expect, like in art history class was one of the harder courses that I took. I mean, I was going to be a biochemist or something. I started off wanting to be a veterinarian. I don't remember how much we talked about that. So originally I had expected to be a veterinarian. So when I was at BCC, one of the courses that I took was an animal husbandry course. And as that, I went and did an internship with a vet and spent a couple of days with a vet down in Lime Rock, Connecticut. That was our family vet, and great guy, and learned a ton, and mostly learned that I didn't think I wanted to spend the rest of my life in a vet's office doing what
why was
vets
that?
do.
Why was that the outcome? Was it the 24/7? Was it like being proximate to animals in distress? What was
well, it's a good question. I think like you said, I'm an explorer. I like things that are changing and dynamic, and so there was a sort of static being there. But it was also like what you did as a vet, right? Like a cat came in and we had to declaw the cat, right? So it's like, okay, it's cutting off its fingernail. No, I'd like you're cutting off the top of its, finger. You're cutting its finger off at the first knuckle so it can't grow back, right? So just a lot of things that were intentional. We put a dog under for surgery, and the anesthesia was really strong, and watching the animal come off, it was pretty intense. And so I just realized, it wasn't the day-to-day practice in medicine, that it was probably more the research and the educational aspect of veterinary medicine.
Because it's a direct connect to the patient, the dog, the cat.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So using your ability to analyze, but like at a distance.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And so with that, it was like, okay, well, now what am I going to do?
Well, let's go back to the cut off the claw and put the dog under and watch it recover. Yeah. Was that disturbing to you?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say a little bit, yeah.
Because I'm trying to vibe off of your furrowed brow and your recollection, right? Your vibe. It seems like it's not like, it wasn't ideal. Like your cabin is in this vet business, this clinic, right? And then, oh, by the way, you get to watch these animals suffer without voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought I was going to do something else.
Save the day, right? Whereas, human health, we're not, it's different, right?
It's different.
It's different.
How do you see it as different? Because you're in human health today, right?
Well, first of all, you have a direct say in what's happening, right? You're a conscious being. And so if you want to chop the tops of your fingers off and not have any more nails, and that's cool. You could do that.
I don't know that, by the way, I don't know that you can do this, make the request. I mean, there's no declawing. I've seen manicurists. It's usually about the preservation of nails, but I get it though, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think everybody else will too, that there is that conscious being part. And that was important for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now we're no more declawing, no more witnessing anesthesia fade from the canine world. You graduate from BCC.
Yeah, I graduate from BCC
with a Lime Rock experience, saying, not vet.
A little bit, and I had wanted to be a vet, like from maybe around that New Jersey Transgis, maybe even before that. So I was quite secure. Like in going through high school, I'll be a veterinarian. I'm going to Colorado State. I'm going to go to Tufts, and so it was all that easy.
Oh, so you pre-mapped this thing out pretty much,
to tell, and so it was a little bit disorienting to all of a sudden be like, okay, well now what do I want to do? And so I thought about a lot of things, but I started looking at, and now I was ready to go away and check out, explore someplace new, and it was going to be someplace where I could do the outdoors and out west in Colorado or Montana or Wyoming or whatever.
And were you looking at a lot of those schools? Colorado, Montana?
I mostly looked out in Colorado.
What brought you there in your research? Because
it was the skiing and the mountains and the accessibility, but also like being in the Berkshires. Like I said, as much as I like to hide in the woods, I also want to be out doing things and have access to things. And so Montana, Wyoming were quite remote The universities were different.
Okay.
Both Colorado State and Colorado University had really good biochemistry and biotech programs. And Colorado State up in Fort Collins was just building a new building, and had just bought in a new chair. And the biochemistry program was really taken off.
So if I ask a student today, even with the internet being like super efficient, ChatGPT, right? Like I can find out so many things, right? As a modern student. But if I just ask someone, hey, what do you think about biotech? Like at about your age back then, I don't know that the answer would be so cohesive or robust. Maybe it would be. How did you know biotech, right? Veterinarianism, or being a vet, right? That area of study, we kind of know about that. Living in the country, taking care of animals, right? Being a gardener, being one with the earth, right? Sort of being aware, scanning areas, whether it's large animal, small animal. But biochemistry, your grandfather was a banker. Your mom was like a magician raising 6 children. Where did biochemistry come into the mix?
I think I was strong in the sciences. I always liked the sciences.
But biochemistry, come on, Bill. I mean, come on.
At the time, my middle sister was getting a degree in biology.
Okay.
And at the time, it was, you got a degree in biology, you went and became a park ranger or something. There just wasn't a ton of jobs or opportunities unless you were staying in education or something. And so biochemistry seemed cool and challenging for me. But to tell you the truth, I had no eye on a job, no idea what I was going to do with the degree. It was like, I'm going to go get an undergraduate degree.
Do you think that's okay? No eye on the job. Tell me about that, because a lot of the stuff we're talking about, right, is about eventually working. But it's also about like, hey, the thing that I'm doing ties with this sort of way I'm showing up in the world, like as a curious person, as an explorer, somebody who cares about plants, or the reactions that happen within the living world, we'll call it, I guess, as a broad sort of way of describing all organisms, to be inclusive. Do you think it's important not to think of job or career?
I think everybody's different, right?
Okay.
And I think, if you wind up on that path where, like I thought in 5th grade or whatever, I want to be a veterinarian, and that's ultimately what comes through for you, then I think that's fine, and it's great, right? And I think if as your journey unfolds and it turns out that's not it, or you realize that it's not what you thought it was going to be, I think it's okay to change, right? And so we worked from very early age, like I said, from a single mother, so we all kind of knew how to make a living and have jobs. So it wasn't.
Yeah, man, but you changed because you tried it. You tried it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know that everybody tries it. I think we have to help people try it more, whatever their it is,
Yeah.
Like, where's the experience? You got to reflect on it. Like, you learned so much about yourself by not wanting to declaw and to go through watching dogs come out of anesthesia, right? Yeah. Like, you got to try it. I remember my son stuck his hands legally into someone's chest cavity when he was at the University of Rochester for it's called a mini medical school program, mini pre-med. And because it's a teaching hospital, strong memorial, you can be engaged with, physician instructors, professors, and guides. And I think it was pretty competitive. It was about 30 kids who got into the program. He realized much, in a similar way as you did, that even though he wanted to have a direct impact on human life being preserved and bettered through medicine, or like whether it's medicine, he just wanted to safeguard people, be a guardian, if you will.
Yeah.
It was going to take a really long time to do it. It'd take a lot of years of study, and you don't always get to do it the way you want to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because the systems, like, he interviewed basically a bunch of folks in the med school and were part of the program by having conversations and learned a lot. So I guess I just want to say, hey, good for you for doing it, right? Because you have to do the thing to study the thing, to assess the thing, even as a young person, right? Like, you have to be able to figure out a response. And I think that that's something that, we certainly are seeing, is we have to start figuring out those centers and places for eventual self-reliance, right?
Yeah.
But how do you get there, right? So that you actually stay engaged in the world and you don't want to escape it. Or when you escape it, it's through meaningful activities that are like sports like, or recreational or out in the world where you're hiking, even if it's a chi walk, just to understand the vibe of the energy and the environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so here we go. I went on a little rip there, man. Sorry about that.
No,
But you just got me
you're-
you got me thinking, like, hey, experience is critical. So out in Colorado, as I recall, there was kind of a moment where you petitioned the school.
So, again, it's life's always a progression or something, right? So for me to move out to Colorado State, be at a huge university, right, with real advisors and huge departments, and pretty eye opening, I guess. So one of the things that, and my advisor was a great guy. We'd go out and drink beers after spending hours in the lab.
Okay.
So good, fun guy to hang out with, into biking and skiing and the outdoors and stuff. So pretty well balanced individual. And so he had asked me early on to get involved with the biochemistry club at the school. And I thought, as you talked about, hard to make new friends and get connected with people. So I left all my buddies in Massachusetts and went out to Colorado and started fresh again. And so I thought, well, I don't usually do that kind of stuff, but yeah, sure, why not? That sounds cool. So I wound up taking.
Did you think maybe you weren't going to do it for a minute or second? Did you like?
I might have hesitated a bit, but again, I had a pretty good relationship with this guy, and so it was, it was like this guy wouldn't steer me in the wrong direction. Okay. And so I was like, all right, no, let's do it. So I wound up taking on the president of the biochemistry club and organized a bunch of, it was like career. And again, probably from my own not knowing what I want to do or what I'm going to be. When I finish all of this, we did a lot of great career exploration. We went, and there's a big renewable energy facility in Golden, Colorado. And so we went and checked that out and visited some of the biotechs that were building up in Boulder and stuff. And as you said, most kids didn't know what biotech was, let alone what biochemistry was. And I'm not sure I knew what biochemistry was. I knew it was biology and chemistry, and that it would be that it's a difficult space to understand, and that I felt like there was a lot of job opportunities beyond that, but I didn't know whether I was going to go get a law degree. I thought about environmental law. I thought about going and getting my PhD and doing research or whatever, and so I wasn't really sure. So being the president of this club and organize these activities for us really helped me see, the kind of opportunities. Coors was brewing beer out there, and I think at that time you still couldn't even get it on the East Coast. So we went and checked out what biochemists do at Coors, and one of the buddies in my club spent his whole life working for Coors as a biochemist. Brewing their beers and stuff. So, definitely opened.
Because of his club experience, right?
Because we went and saw the facility, and he ultimately applied when he got out of school, and he got it right after his undergrad. And I think he just retired a couple of years ago, actually. So
my gosh.
Kind of funny.
So that club allowed you to continue to jump off the ledge, or to kind of poke into the forest, to kind of go into different territories, right?
It did. I think it really taught me how to collaborate, how to build a team, how to look after people, but how to execute on things, right? How to make things happen. So one of our biggest accomplishments is we wanted to bring in outside speakers, right? So the department would bring in various professors and stuff. So we thought, well, let's bring in a big name speaker. So at the time, James Watson and the U.S. government were just kicking off this huge human genome initiative. They were going to spend, I don't remember what the money was then, but it was a huge amount of money, billions of dollars, and it was going to take 10 years to sequence the entire genome. And then basically, if we did that, we would understand everything about the human body, because we would have the dictionary, if you will, right? You'd have the language of DNA, and we'd understand all that. And so we said, well, let's see if we can get him to come here. And even then he was at Cold Spring Harbor, and so we had to fly him out to Colorado. And so we petitioned the student council and went to get fundraising. Every year there was a big fundraising cycle. And so the team worked really hard, and we put this whole pitch together and wound up being the highest funded club at the university that year. So we wrote to James Watson and tried to get him to come and visit us. And he said, if he was really busy at the time.
Did you tell him we had the dough?
We told him we had the dough, and we could get him here. We had the honorarium and everything.
Was he busy? Come on.
But had a ton going on. But what he did do is he connected us with with this guy, Tom Check, who was a pioneer in the RNA space. So he was the guy that
RNA.
discovered that RNA could serve as an enzyme or a molecule. And basically there's now a lot of RNA-based drugs and things. So, and he wound up getting the Nobel Prize right after that. So we did wind up getting our Nobel Prize speaker. And he was at University of Colorado at the time. So he wasn't so complicated to get there or whatever. So, but again, it was an early, I guess, experience of building a team and really kind of putting together a high performance organization and making something happen.
But to me, as a listener of this story or this moment, right, like as you kind of go through it and recollect it, like you're like a relationship guy in disguise as a biochemist.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, you didn't just go for your selfish reasons. Like maybe you started that way. You were a young guy, right, doing your thing. But it sounds like you figured out how to relate and to be related to, like human skills, right?
I think, yeah, a lot of people say not the typical scientist, maybe.
Yeah.
I think I told you my grandfather was a banker and very analytical and very numbers guy. Mm-hmm. And my mom was much more of an artist, a florist, and an actress, and very creative. She spent some time down in Cuba as a journalist, spoke Spanish, so very diverse and artistic career background. So I always used to joke with my brother that I was Spock because it was half, super over emotional, and then half overly analytical. So.
Yeah, that's tremendous. So that's really a nice integration. You can't divorce yourself from creativity and the, sort of mental muscles to be relational as a human being, right? And the expertise that you bring to any work that you do or any line of study that you do, right? You can be an expert in something, but without human skills, you can't be relational and you can't convert that. Talk about RNA being like a vehicle, right? Yeah. Like this is the real catalyst is human skills. How do you think that your work in that club as a young person developing, an expertise in biochemistry were groomed or started or were helped along by some of the tasks at hand?
I think that was what really set the seeds of collaboration and probably even leadership and team building, right? What does it take to get people excited about something, to gravitate towards something? And I guess in my career, that's always been an incredibly important component of it, right? That you have those humanistic qualities, that you're a good mentor, that you're honest, hard worker, that you do things the way they should be done, and that you encourage other people to do that. So I think that experience at Colorado State really helped with that and laying the groundwork for that, but also being rewarded for that, right?
Yeah. Behaviorally, right? Like, hey, you get some attention, people appreciate you.
Totally.
Yeah. Did you like the attention or did you like the appreciation? Or was the appreciation the attention?
I think, you like it. A little bit shy to it and probably even a little bit shy to it to this day. But I think, to me, it's important to be making a difference, right? To be trying
also to be known as being competent at something. I mean, everybody wants to be somebody, right? You don't want to just be like faded out.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're on stage all the time either, right? Like sometimes we like reduce the complexity of, someone's like a introvert or extrovert. The complexity of being human, though, it's like, well, I might not always want the stage, but if there's a good reason, I'll stand up and show you what I'm made of and how I can help or be in service,
Yeah.
So, so now you did end up really in the ocean state, right?
I did.
That's my state. Let's hear it. You landed at Brown. You landed at Brown.
I landed at Brown. So before I landed at Brown, so Colorado State, after the club, connected with wound up started doing research there. So now real research scientists studying liver, kidney function. We were looking at gene expression in kidneys, how the kidney responds to various disease states, and mostly in the context of diabetes. So that was an underlying theme even to this day, I guess, scientifically. And so the guy that I was working with was an MD, PhD that had come over from Germany. So a German guy from Freiburg, Germany, loved to ski and had his pilot's license. So just like the ultimate explorer guy to go out and check things out with. So we'd work late in the lab, but super, typical German, I guess, hyper intelligent scientist, but also very
no tolerance for error.
No tolerance for error, but a lot of interest in fun and getting out. So he left the lab and went back to Germany, was setting up a lab over there, had won this, the guy that he was working with had won this Wilhelm Leibniz Prize, which was kind of the German equivalent of a Nobel Prize. So they had a ton of money. Molecular biology was really in its infancy in Germany at the time. Actually because of World War II and going back to, genocide and stuff. And so they had very strict rules for this gene laws and what could be done with manipulating DNA and things like that. So, so we set up a molecular biology lab over there, spent 2 years in Germany.
2 years in Germany from Colorado State before.
State.
Wow. How did you tell the family, like, hey, I'm splitting, I'm making another jump, New Jersey, the Berkshires to Colorado. Oh, by the way, Germany.
So my mom always encouraged us to explore, and there was 5 of us. So usually, and we were all late bloomers, so everybody was back in and out of the house over the years. But no, I think she was excited. She had traveled to Europe when we were younger,
so she promoted and supported
us. Yeah, and
okay.
actually, even one of my younger sisters got to go to a trip to the Netherlands, young. Her friend was going, and so supported international travel and education was always big on. Doesn't matter where you go to school, but you're going, you're getting a college education from somewhere, even though she couldn't pay for it. But certainly encouraged us to all do that. So over to Germany for 2 years and. A lot culturally learning things. And that was hard. That was probably one of the hardest things that I've done. I took a intense semester course of German before I went over, but that doesn't give you conversational German. And so, but it was cool.
It gets you started, right?
Ultimately learned the language and cried in my beers.
And do you use it today here?
I do. Yeah,
you do?
Sure. And then ultimately I'd wind up working for our company for almost a total of 12 years. So headquartered in Hamburg, Germany. And
so you were back and forth.
So I was mostly in Germany. I moved over.
Slow it down here. Wait a minute. So we're in Germany for a 2-year gig.
I moved over in the summer, June or something. And then that December, I was going to go home for Christmas, like everybody comes home for Christmas. And I decided, if I go home for Christmas, I'm probably not going to come back.
Okay.
So decided that I wasn't going to go home. And so instead, my brother came over and met me, and we hung out in Germany for a couple of days, and I think spent Christmas up in the Black Forest, and then we took off and went to Germany went to Africa for a couple of weeks. We went whitewater rafting in Zambia and Zimbabwe, and spent some time in Africa, and that was a massive reset again to just come back and put Germany into perspective or whatever. So, and then I think it was more than a little over a year, that I finally went back to Colorado and back to the States, and then back to Germany for the better part of another year.
So you're back post Africa. You're there doing the lab. Then you get hired, or then you go to Brown.
No. So then I come back to the States. Interview for jobs in Colorado, out in California and San Francisco, Stanford Research Institute, back in the East Coast at a couple of early stage biotechs that if I had gotten hired, I'd be retired and done by now. But
well, I'm glad you're not. You still have game. Though.
Yeah,
you still have game.
So wound up painting with a good buddy of mine, and
you said painting,
house painting, right?
Okay,
house painting. So from molecular biologist setting up labs in Germany.
But you knew a lot about the viscosity of paint under certain temperatures.
Yeah. So and my boss definitely loved that I was the only guy in the crew with a college degree.
Oh gosh!
But he had some high profile accounts, so we painted one of the houses down at the Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, again, next to Norman Rockwell's place there, that wound up in one of the Better Home and Gardens magazine or something. So I would joke with all my buddies, at least I'm still publishing. So
you're going to get the last word on those scientists.
But exactly. But I realized that I wasn't going to, my future probably wasn't in painting. So
did you know it was a stopover, like in your gut? Did you say, this is just a stopover, I need to make a few bucks and eat and
I
go
had
out?
been everywhere, right? Like since I'd left the Berkshires in 88 and it was now 94 and 95, I think I'd been in 10 or 12 different countries and lived in different states. And it was like, I just kind of wanted to come home and lick my wounds in the Berkshires or something.
Ski down the hill.
Exactly.
The little one, right? The little hill. I'll take the little hill.
Have something not quite so exotic for once.
Yeah.
And so,
did you feel that urge to come back home for the reset?
I think I did. I mean, if I had gotten a position in Colorado or California, I'm sure I would have taken it and it would have sent me down a different path. But it was good to be here. And then ultimately I took a position at Joslin Diabetes Center, which was in Boston at Harvard, and again, sent me down a different path. And that was really what got me set up at Pfizer and working at Pfizer in Groton, Connecticut, set out on the southeastern Connecticut coast. And
so then Pfizer.
Yeah. And then Pfizer was incredible. I mean, I went from, really very deep understanding of what drug discovery is, right? From an academic level, right? Of how does disease biology work? What does it mean when something breaks? But no clue about what you do with that other than put it in a paper that 6 other people in the world can understand or whatever. And then at Pfizer, I really understood, like, this is how you cure disease, right? This is how you find the chemical that addresses the thing that you understood is broken. And now this is how you manufacture it into a drug, how you make it go through safety, how you deal with all the regulatory agencies. So I spent 5 years there, and it really taught me the full drug discovery process.
Something not teachable easily in school, per se. Yeah.
No, you really have
How are your brothers and sisters and colleagues, your humans who are in the space, how did they look at you going to Pfizer? Because you were a bit on an academic track, like staying at the academy, so to speak, right?
No, totally.
It sounds like that anyway. It could be off, but it sounds that way.
It's funny. I just reconnected with my old professor at Joslin Diabetes Center who was a big scuba diver. So I also got in the scuba dive when I was out in Colorado. So we did quite a bit of scuba diving. And when I was working in the lab just making no money whatsoever. My brother was doing his undergraduate at Northeastern, but he would come back here to the Berkshires and he was bartending at Dakota a couple days a week, and he was making more money bartending than I was working trying to save people from diabetes. So kind of ironic. But anyways, it was like, no, come on, you can't sell out, especially in those days,
so
right?
It was considered a sellout.
To leave academia.
Did that undermine your motivation, or were you just so curious that you were like, I'm going anyway, man. I got to figure this out, or I need a job, or a combination.
At that point, I needed money, right? Yeah. Like I'm making 20 grand a year.
Is that a bad thing? Because a lot of times people think, like, oh, you shouldn't take that because it's not right for you. You don't really know what's right for you until you do something. The it that you then figure out, well, that's not it. That's not the vet job.
It wasn't just the money, right?
Okay.
It definitely wasn't it. So now I had done research. I had published papers. I had survived Harvard, right? And saw what that world was. And I think
what
for
do you
me,
mean survive Harvard? What does that mean?
I may or may not have. It's pretty intense.
Yeah,
environment
but what do you mean survived
academically.
Harvard? You went to Harvard?
No. That's where I was working, right? So I was in the labs.
People don't know this, Bill. You got to bring us to speed, man.
Sorry.
Come on
So Joslin Diabetes Center is part of Harvard.
Yeah,
and
man. I got
very intense and competitive professors, and good, right? It keeps you on your game.
So survived it.
Yeah,
but you didn't feel like it was all of what you should be doing?
No, it definitely, much like veterinary medicine, right? This isn't the place that I want to be. It was a super exciting time to be there. Judah Folkman was doing a lot of work with the VEGF inhibitors, which have to do with blood vessels and feeding cancers. And so there was a lot of really seminal science going on there. But no, I just never felt like I was going to be the next great scientist. There were 2 great scientists at the Joslin Diabetes Center that were really seminal discoveries in the diabetes space. And so, but no, it wasn't my calling. So
Pfizer.
Yeah.
And now you're at Pfizer 5 years. Get me to the ocean state, man. I'm dying to hear you're riding that way.
Pfizer, in addition to all these amazing perks and everything else that they had this incredible relationship with Brown University. So if you were working at Pfizer fully covered all your costs for Brown courses. So to get a master's degree in biology. And we had a huge auditorium. So not only did they pay for everything, but the Brown professors would come down and teach the courses at Pfizer for us.
In Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
So I don't know that a lot of people know this, because that was really innovative at the time, right? That's not like, this is like pre-distance learning, pre-online, learning management systems and software, et cetera. So they would show up and you had basically a university extension.
Yeah. And
from Brown inside your workplace.
An incredible professional auditorium set up. They would do it during the school day. Wow. They would record it so that if you were working or you were doing your experiments or whatever, that we would have it recorded. So at one point, I wound up being the guy who would record the classes. So then they were paying me to just be at Pfizer. Then they were paying for the Brown classes. Then we would pay me on top of that to be shooting the videos of the Brown courses. And then we'd put 7 tapes in the library and they'd give me my own master copy in case I needed it for studying. So, I mean, really, kind of supercharged Brown, right? Wow. So, and again, the professors are there. So we really had access to them. So while I was doing that, I was also doing Rensselaer had an MBA program. And again, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go career-wise. So I started taking some business courses down there, some MBA courses at the same time I was doing the Brown course. And that was great because that's how I met my wife. So
she was in the MBA program at Rensselaer?
So she's a radiation therapist. She was actually up here at BMC until we had the kids and is now mostly with the kids. But prior to that, she was at Yale, so she was a clinical coordinator.
Over at Yale,
and she was getting and then ran
my cousin's an anesthesiologist over there. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah. So ran a community college-based program out of the New Haven area that did all their clinical work with Yale and helped people with 2-year degrees in radiation therapy. But she was doing a master's in healthcare, and we just happened to be in an accounting class together. So.
The right return on collision.
Yeah, totally.
Wow. Okay, so now you're taking it. Some people may think, well, what are you doing taking all these classes? Like, just take the job, dude. Take the job. And then think about but you said, no, I see a connection. Yes, I see a connection. Yes. Is that important for people to do more of? Because we live in a world where it seems like from a digital standpoint, you can jump into anything, but you're not really in anything, right? Like you can have an interest in something, an aptitude, a curiosity, but it's very different than actually doing the thing, doing the class, engaging in the work. Stephen Pressfield says something in one of his books that I reference Stephen in my book in a different way with a different story and a different connection, but it's a great, and my wife Shannon said this the other day to someone that we know, that it's important to put she was quoting Stephen in his book, to put your heart where your ass wants to be. Put your ass where your heart wants to be. That's it right there. And, I'm not big on cussing, but, it makes sense when you quote somebody. But what he's really saying is, you have to be there. In the class, you have to be there. If you have a heart for understanding, living systems, you actually have to be there, right? You can't mail it in. So great actors, go to where there's great acting opportunities. And granted, there's a lot of distance opportunities and tech-enabled possibilities. I'm at an innovation center. I get it, man. But how important is that message that Pressfield gives us, that you should really put your rear end where your heart wants to be, to you?
I think you have to.
Man, I think it's right there. I don't mean to be telling you that's the answer, man, but I think you like embody it.
For me, it's like I always expect good things to be hard work. I don't like to work hard for nothing. I'm not the guy go dig the hole, fill it back in, right? But it's like if I'm exploring in the tunnels going somewhere, I'm going to keep digging, right? Okay. And so I think that's I think people have to realize good things take time.
Says the gardener. Says the gardener from Otis. Exactly. I'm going to keep digging. Come on. I saw that move. Bill.
Always something else to plant, right? Always something else to plant.
Well, that is a continuous cycle, right? And the word career actually, I believe, comes from the Greek, which means circle or wheel. Yeah. So like there's this notion that you should, there is momentum, there's movement, and there's a circularity to it, that I'm doing it, whatever it is, I'm thinking about it, And then I'm like, that self-reflection allows me to gain insight as to how that thing that I'm doing is it what I thought I was doing, right? Like you start any activity, learning, a job, a class, and you have some sort of belief. And then as you're doing it, and it could be learning pottery, learning how to understand German, right? When you were at the lab in Germany, you could have any belief beforehand, but then as you're doing the thing, you test the belief, right? And you're not knowing it, that my beliefs are like, they're invalid and I need to change it. So if you're figuring out how to do pottery for the first time, you might be like, well, I thought I could move my thumbs this way, but I have to isolate my thumbs to get the shape of the vase, right? So I have to abandon what I thought was this way of approaching it and adjust to kind of transform a belief or add a belief that I need to embody in doing the thing, right? And I'm not trying to be academic here or overly psychological or learning theory oriented, but you start with ideas, you do the thing, and then you adjust the idea of what the thing is to accommodate reality.
Yeah.
As you were learning, right, and you kept trying to figure out what your new reality was going to be, because you were digging, you were being a good gardener in your career, and you were headed somewhere. Did you find yourself did you discover, or were you discovering any beliefs that you were like, wow, this isn't valid, that you can't do school and work at the same time, or I thought I was going to be an academic, but now I'm in sort of a different space. Like, what were some of beliefs, or did you have any beliefs that you were able to be like, oh, that's not right anymore?
There were definitely a lot of the periods of doubt, right, where you think, what am I doing and where is this going, right? But I think I've always persevered to keep doing what I'm doing until I have the strategy for the next thing, right? And like you said, definitely allowing that to shape and bring about what that next thing is.
So you didn't give up, though? Like, you didn't tap out and say, oh, this isn't working exactly idealistically. You stayed in the game, and then you kind of set up the next evolution of your study, of your research, of your work in bettering how living systems kind of react to being broken, as you said.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool, man. I'm glad I'm on your side.
Yeah.
So now you're a CEO.
Now I'm a CEO.
Now you're a CEO. A company in Canada that you kind of anchored, really, in the Berkshires, back at home.
Yeah.
Where you're not really licking your wounds, but you're helping people who are a bit wounded by disease. Right? Yeah. So can you give us a little up to speed? Because people don't think of like the Berkshires as like a biotech hub or in that space. Although I think 18 of the 20 top biotech companies have a major presence in Massachusetts. It's not necessarily, newsflash, Bill, Pittsfield.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're striking distance from here.
Yeah, so, they are.
It's definitely a place to be from biotech. I always make a big deal of being in Boston in biotech, and then when we get deeper in the conversation, we go, the Berkshires, that's not in Boston. That's not even close to Boston. So,
it's in the Commonwealth.
Well, it gets even better, I guess, because how we got here is a long story. So as I said, I learned the German, and then I jumped from the bench at Pfizer doing science, doing business development, worked with some California-based companies, and wound up working for a company based in Hamburg, Germany, that did integrated drug discovery. So kind of what Pfizer does, these guys did for hire, right?
So they were drug hunters?
They were drug hunters.
Isn't that what, I could be off here.
Exactly,
I'm out.
Exactly,
all right.
Exactly.
Thank you for the show notes.
They were drug hunters. They were German drug hunters, right? It's a really smart group of people. The company really
So
grew.
what does a drug hunter do for someone listening to this? They're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then they go buy it. So let's not go buy it, because that's a cool phrase. I remember the first time I heard it.
Look, I've got a CSO that's probably taken 20 drugs to market. He was the CSO of Galapagos, Chief Scientific Officer.
Scientific Officer, right? And getting the audience up to speed. Go ahead.
He's our real drug hunter, honestly.
Okay.
He's bought 4 drugs to market. He bought one of the early HIV drugs to market. So this guy's been there.
They find the stuff.
No, they find
it. And so they're very narrow banded, right? In what they're expert that, I would imagine.
Yeah. And so for those guys, they're super focused, right? And I think in general, the field of drug hunting, like anything, takes a lot of support people, right? Not just the people that find the critical molecules or seminal discoveries, but all the support that turns that into a drug and gets it to humans. And so, but yeah, I think it's people out there that have a passion to make a difference in human disease biology, and that they think very creatively about it, right? And they come from big pharma companies where things are much more incrementally managed, and they come from innovative startup biotechs and everything else. But they're the men and women that really make the seminal discoveries that lead to all the incredible medical treatments that we have available to us today.
Amazing. So you breezed by this earlier. Not on purpose, but I think you said over 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah. So
you lived in Germany, or did you live in the Berkshires and bounce around before it was cool to be remotely working?
So I lived in Germany from 92 to 94, and then I came back, and I mostly just traveled a lot. So I haven't lived in Europe again since that. That may change, but at least currently.
For now, we want you here.
Haven't lived back in Europe. So the company had places in Verona, Italy, and Toulouse, France, and Oxford in the UK, and in Hamburg. So I did a ton of traveling. I worked with big pharma.
You're a traveler from way back. So, I mean, right? Not just the New Jersey Berkshire, but then like the whole, Colorado. And then it seemed like it became part of your flow to travel.
One of the things that I remember about New Jersey and being on Bartman Road in this little suburbia was having this little big wheel. There were these little tricycled little scooter things, right? The big wheels. And
probably worth some dough right now.
The most frustrating thing about me with that big wheel is I couldn't go far enough, fast enough, and I wanted an electrified big wheel. Or probably what I wanted was a VTOL. We just didn't know what they were yet, right? So I have always had the wanderlust, and when you learn a new language and you meet another culture, it's interesting because you learn words that are concepts that you can't quite fully express in your own language. I know you speak other languages, so you get that, right? And so for Germany, it was just really cool, Geist, this sense of spirit and what, the drive is and that. And so for me, Wanderlust was really Wanderlust was, really captured it. And I definitely
That's great. The etymology of it all, Well, I remember when my publisher said, or the foreign agency that said, or the translation rights agency said they were going to translate. I wanted to know if they wanted to translate. I wanted to sign off on translating my book's rights, A Story Like You Mean It rights, to German and to, we did to Chinese. But they're going to potentially change the name of the book, but not the content. And so instead of Story Like You Mean It, now I don't think I shared this with you, so this is really kind of fun to reveal. They renamed it, and I'll show you a copy of it later. Tell Me Who You Are. So now that I'm thinking about this, man, we should get some shirts and say, tell me who you are, right? Because it's like there's something uniquely German about that, man. Like totally, that is, right? That's
cut through the, exactly,
look, I don't even know all bad way, but like just give me the stuff. Do you like the cars, the tolerance good, and the body panels? Like, is the drug the right drug, right?
Yeah.
Are the results, confirming or not? Tell me who you are.
And it's like, and that's, so to me, that was a big cultural thing when I moved over there, because you go over and you talk to people, people look you in the eye and you're having an intense discussion, and they hold you to your word. So you say something in the States, you're kind of, it doesn't really mean, they're like, no, why do you say that? What do you mean by that? Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a super engaged, committed interaction with people, and it's much less
a committed interaction, man. I love this.
It's much less glossed over than we are here. It's
so I'm in it with you.
Yeah.
The conversation, right? You tell me this word, tell me why you say that word. So when I was at the University of Rochester, you're bringing me back on a mental flight when I had Ulrich von Stein, who was he was I think technically a baron in Bavaria, but he was one of my roommates, and then another one of my roommates who was English, but he was German, but he lived in England. I learned a lot from those folks. Now, granted, I felt like I was in Germany because like 50% of my house was German, but that off-campus time, in the particular ward I was in Rochester, New York, was a cultural sort of experiment for me, and a social experiment, because I learned how direct they were.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be refreshing. It can be alarming for an American. But you can learn, right? This receptivity, this openness, this exploration, this contemplative wanderer that's in you that allows you to understand the boundaries of discovery, but also the limits and their opportunities. Like on the fringe of one sort of culture or drug hunt, you can find something right there, right? And that's where you can create. And you've created this sort of CEO from the Berkshires program here, right? Which isn't usually, like, we're not known in the Berkshires, right, for creating CEOs. But that's very much part of what happened for you. Your current role as CEO is with a company that is looking to help some broken things that happen within us as human beings. Can you maybe provide a little bit of an update as to where you are in that part of your journey, in your life work narrative, so that we can kind of connect those dots, man?
Yeah, totally.
The blue ones and all of them.
Totally. So, so the journey started over in Germany with Evotech. The program now that's in Canada was originally partnered with the Belgian biotech company, pharmaceutical company called Galapagos. And what happens oftentimes, right? Galapagos, beautiful. And what happens is, pharma gets distracted. They get big programs and then they have to cut things down. So they cut the programs down. They came back to us, and all of a sudden we're this little biotech in Canada with a real drug hunting team that wants to keep these assets going and want to see them get into patients and make a difference in people's lives. That's what they've been doing.
So you don't give up
their whole career. So they don't give up, and I don't give up. And
now you were on the board.
I was on the board. I started off on the board of directors.
Okay.
So I started it as a small business development deal up in Canada, thinking, okay, good luck, guys. And it's like, okay, well, it'll help us hire a management team.
So you're seeing things from a different standpoint as a board member, right? Because you're advisory to the leadership.
Yeah.
But you're not doing operations at that point.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So just seeing the whole thing for him. And it's, again, great experience for me. I'm not getting paid any extra for it or anything. It's just a side job that's a part of what we've spun out of the company. So then ultimately the company invests in it, and now we have to look after the investment. So set me on the board and spent about 5 years on the board, watching the company evolve and get its first deals done. And again, hard work tends to bring some good luck. So we were lucky, right?
Keep digging, baby. Keep digging.
Keep digging. Right? The programs are looking good. And so, currently these drugs are about halfway through so there's two programs. One is in Alport syndrome that's partnered with a Japanese pharmaceutical company. So great group to work with. They're based out of Princeton and out of Boston, Mass, and out in Seattle. So, and then obviously in Japan. But great team to work with. So they cover a lot of that. I've got a small team that works with them and supports that.
International flair still, right? Like still the traveling Bill,
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometime over there, I spent quite a bit of time in Japan building a team. So have some exposure to it. I mentioned my grandmother's German. So there's a lot of triangulations where things come back around, right? So even if you don't need it this time, you didn't need the class, you didn't pay attention and listen, because you may need it down the road, and things do tend to come back around. And so, the second program is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a disease of the lungs that really kills people almost as fast as pancreatic cancer. Usually from diagnosis, they have about 3 years. And the current treatments out there are kind of like first generation chemotherapy drugs, a lot of toxicity, a lot of people can't tolerate them.
And the time to treat, to even, from diagnosis to that maybe not as effective as you wish chemo can be sometimes months, right?
Yeah.
And so like you might go 4 to 6 months before you get treatment, maybe 3 to 4 if you're lucky. And that's already like, a fifth maybe of your lifespan.
Yeah. Or they wind up having to do transplants. And so very difficult, very hard.
How do people get this sort of idiopathic?
It tends to be
Bit
genetic, and we don't
genetic. Okay.
entirely understand it. It can be from environmental sources, from smoking, from
Asbestos at
industrial
all or anything?
asbestos, some, but there's not. There can also be people that have none of that history that wind up with it as well.
Okay.
So it's a
Okay.
quite
So hard to
somewhat
discern at this
random.
point. Okay.
Exactly, not like COPD where there's a
How
clear
many like
environmental insult.
people are sort of discovered with this condition?
It's hard to give an
Not to put you on the spot
answer.
because
No, it's okay.
and maybe you
There's
can't answer this because it's not something you should be answering right now. So I don't.
It's
I
still
don't
an
wanna-
orphan indication,
It is.
but
Okay.
there's millions. I think there's 60 million patients in the U.S.
right now.
So so it's huge, and then globally even bigger. It's worse in the industrial worlds than it is
Okay.
in developing nations. And there's 2 drugs on the market currently. There's a ton of them in the clinic. The problem is that most of those drugs either see very limited efficacy, or they're not safe and they have toxic side effects.
What's the best outcome that you think is possible? And I know you can't be a predictor of every person as an individual, and their condition and physicality is a function of a whole lot of lived experiences themselves, right? And also predispositions and likelihoods and genetic sort of influence. But how likely is somebody to, like, what happens when somebody does or will be able to get this drug? What is the best wish for them?
So right now, we're still lung disease biology is very complicated. It's very difficult, unlike the liver or even the kidney, to get some cell regeneration. In the way the lung architecture works, once tissue is damaged, it's very difficult for it to regenerate itself. So most medications, including ours, are really looking to just halt
So
the
it's
progression
cessation
of the
so
disease.
cessation
right?
of progression.
And
Okay.
then how much we can start reversing it, I think, remains to be seen. It's definitely a much bigger way to lift. There's some cell therapy possibilities, but again, very difficult with the way that lung biology works. And so the hope for us with this drug is that it's a very clean drug. It's got an incredible profile. And going back to your drug hunter comments, when the data's come back from the safety studies, it's like, wow, quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, must be a duck, right? So you can tell, like drug hunters on the scene. So the profile is incredibly clean. We're expecting it to be very safe in humans. So what we're hoping and aiming for is that we get the drug into patients earlier and it really arrests the disease,
Okay.
and that they can take the drug without any complications or side effects. The way that our approach works, it's different from all the other mechanisms that folks are using. So it should be possible to take our drug in combination with those other drugs. Now, it's not going to help with those side effects, but maybe they can take less of those drugs and then minimize those side effects. Or in a perfect world, they don't need the additional drugs, and ours gives them the relief that they're needing. But so we've got a number of clinicians that we work with on our team that are super experienced, and that's what they do is spend their days seeing patients that have IPF. And to them, it's a brutal disease. It's very hard for them. And in fact, it's very hard disease to do clinical trials on. These people are living at home.
Okay.
They're pretty sedentary. It's hard for them to get up and down stairs or move around, get out of the house, let alone, to get into a clinical site and do studies and things like that. So it has a pretty drastic impact.
And clinical sites aren't everywhere, right? People, I don't know that everybody thinks of the fact that, like, if you're at a hospital, not every hospital has an intimate relationship with a research university.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, going back to maybe that, trying to think beyond the scientist, right? But how do we do this right? So how do we bring clinical trials more to the patients? When I spoke about Alport syndrome, that's a disease, it's a genetic disorder that when males are homozygous for the disease, the collagen architecture of their kidney doesn't develop properly. So rather than your kidney growing and becoming stronger and bigger, it shrinks. And so by the time they're 18 to 20, 21 years old, their kidneys are really shrunk and they wind up needing to have a kidney transplant. And so you got kids that you should be going to
Oh my gosh.
going to the prom, graduating from high school, right? Not going to Boston for clinical trials, wherever you need to go. So there's a group called the Alport Syndrome Foundation, and it's a patient registry, and they've just done a bunch of studies with patients with Alport to try and find better targets. And there's patient advocacy groups out there that try to make it easier, Dennis, for people to be able to go and really get the most the largest number of patients that are in need enrolled in the studies, because not everybody has the economic means or the practical means to get into a clinical trial site.
Access is an issue, right?
Yeah,
like access is an issue.
Yeah.
So as you're sharing the Alport sort of story, right, and like what folks have to face and what their lives are like it struck me in this exchange, probably because we're 3 feet away, that, that's kind of an emotional thing.
Yeah.
When you think about the patient, the human being for you. And, part of your essence is I think informed by your development, right? And probably, your genetic predisposition. But Mom as an artist would say that you have a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding of context and ability to use that to inform how you go about the work that you do. And I'm just glad you're in the seat that you're in, because it's not like CEOs are known as being, empathetic, caregiver guardians who want to go out in the world. And I'm not saying they're bad, man. I like CEOs because someone's going to be the influencer of the work, whatever work that is that they deem good and appropriate for their story and their enterprise. But when we get into spaces like biotechnology and drug hunting and fixing brokenness in a way that is so accessible to people, it's clear that you're in the right seat. So maybe that's the trend, right? Maybe the Berkshire does grow a different kind of CEO, or maybe you're just helping and being an example of what one can look like. So, we're going to continue to have conversations outside of the vault for sure. But, you have provided, I think, I know, a deep sort of meaningful story, and maybe some formula for someone out there to think about what they can do to have impact in the world. Because our work is a big part of our life, right? Yeah. And work-life integration is real. And when you can get there and you can see those connections, you can feel more whole and more connected to who you are. And you can move about with a lot more liberation, and man, I'm telling you got a cool story. Let's just get to it, man. You got a cool story. Lots of triangulation and a gardener of sorts for sure still. Yeah. So keep digging, man. Yeah. All right.
No, I've been fortunate, and again, I appreciate the opportunity to come in and sit down and dig it out a little and explore there and pull out some of those tubers and understand them. But no, I think it's important. Like you said, one of the greatest things to be reconnected with the Berkshires here is that opportunity to give back and share some of those learnings with other people. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for the treasures, man. Yeah, appreciate you. All right.
Awesome.